Picture this. The two most watched Netflix action films ever made, films that collectively racked up over 270 million views each, are about to get a spin-off set in Seoul's criminal underworld. The creative team behind that spin-off includes the directors of Avengers, Endgame as producers, one of the most physically imposing action stars in Asian cinema, and a Squid Game villain. And in the middle of all of that, a Thai pop star who had never acted in a feature film before they cast her. That pop star is Lisa. The film is TYGO. And if you're thinking this sounds like a marketing stunt, like a record label paying for a vanity role, you need to hear what's actually happening here, because the real story is almost the opposite of that. By the time we're done, you'll understand exactly why industry insiders believe Lisa's casting in TYGO could be the most strategically calculated move in the Extraction franchise's history, and why it might be the single most important 90 minutes of Lisa's career. Not her music career, her entire career as an entertainer. Let's build this from the ground up. Section 1. Who is Lisa? The international case. If you've never followed K-pop, and most of the people watching this probably don't, here's what you need to know about Lisa in terms that have nothing to do with fandom. Her real name is Lalisa Manobal. She's Thai, born in Buriram province, and she moved to South Korea alone at 14 years old to audition for YG Entertainment, one of the most powerful music labels in Korea. She made it. She trained for years. And in 2016, she debuted as the youngest member and lead dancer of BLACKPINK, which would go on to become one of the most commercially successful pop acts on the planet. But Lisa's solo story is where things get genuinely remarkable. In September 2021, she released her solo debut single, Lalisa. The music video set the record at the time for the most views in the first 24 hours ever achieved by a solo artist on YouTube. 73.6 million views in a single day. Her debut single album sold over 736,000 copies in its first week in South Korea, making her the first female artist ever to reach that number there. The follow-up track from that same release, Money, became the first song by a solo K-pop artist to cross 1 billion streams on Spotify. Not the first K-pop song, the first K-pop solo artist song. Then she went further. By 2023, she held Guinness World Records for most Instagram followers by a K-pop artist, 107 million at that time, most viewed YouTube video in 24 hours by a solo K-pop artist, and most viewed YouTube video overall by a solo K-pop artist. These aren't niche records within a genre. These are global metrics. Here's the thing that makes Lisa different from every other K-pop idol who has tried to cross into Western entertainment. She isn't just Korean. She is Thai. She speaks Thai, Korean, English, Japanese, and Mandarin. She exists at the intersection of Southeast Asian pop culture and the Korean wave, which means she connects to audiences in Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, the Philippines, and across the region in a way that no Korean-born idol can naturally replicate. Western streaming platforms have been paying attention to that for years, because those audiences, hundreds of millions of people in Southeast Asia with rapidly expanding internet access and disposable income, represent one of the most valuable and fastest-growing subscriber bases on Earth for services like Netflix. In December 2023, Lisa did not renew her individual contract with YG Entertainment. She stayed in BLACKPINK as a group, but her solo career was now hers to control. In February 2024, she launched her own management company, LLOUD, and signed with RCA Records in the United States. Her debut studio album, Alter Ego, dropped in February 2025 and debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200. What the official announcements around all of this didn't quite capture is that this wasn't just a label switch. This was an architect drawing a blueprint, and TYGO is what that blueprint was pointing toward. Section 2. What is TYGO? Building the stakes. To understand why TYGO matters, you need to understand what it belongs to. In April 2020, in the middle of a global pandemic when nobody could go anywhere, Netflix released Extraction, a Chris Hemsworth action thriller produced by the Russo brothers, the directing duo behind Avengers, Endgame and Avengers, Infinity War. It became the most-watched Netflix original film at the time. Not one of the most watched. The most watched. 90 million households in its first 4 weeks. The sequel, Extraction 2, dropped in 2023. It debuted at number 1 on Netflix's global charts and stayed there for 7 consecutive weeks, accumulating over 134 million views. Together, these two films built one of the most successful action franchises Netflix has ever produced. And the Russo brothers, through their production company TYGO, are now building out an entire cinematic universe around it. TYGO is not just the next sequel, it's the first spin-off. A A separate story in a separate country following a different mercenary, but woven into the same fictional world. The film follows TYGO, a former child soldier turned mercenary played by Don Lee, known in Korea as Ma Dong-seok, the man whose punch-first, punch-second approach to action made the Roundup franchise a phenomenon, and who appeared in Marvel's Eternals alongside Salma Hayek and Angelina Jolie. TYGO launches a revenge mission through Korea's criminal underworld after a mission goes badly wrong. Lee Jin-yuka, one of the most recognizable faces from Squid Game, plays the villain, a crime boss named Armin Choi, and Lisa plays Rhea, TYGO's closest friend, whose kidnapping by a criminal syndicate is the event that sets the entire film's revenge plot in motion. Let that sit for a second. Lisa's character is not a cameo. She is the inciting incident of the story. TYGO goes to war for her. The creative team is as serious as the production scale suggests. Director Lee Sang-yong helmed The Roundup and its sequel, The Roundup: No Way Out. Films that combined generated over $100 million at the Korean box office and are regarded as some of the most precise action choreography work produced anywhere in Asia in the last decade. Writer Cha Woo-jin joins him. Production wrapped in March 2026 with TYGO confirmed as co-producers, marking their 9th collaboration with Netflix, a partnership that also includes The Gray Man and The Electric State. But here's the part that most entertainment journalists glossed over when they covered the announcement. This film is not being released in Asia and then exported. Netflix is distributing TYGO globally from day one, with the full weight of the Extraction franchise behind it, a franchise with a built-in global audience that has already demonstrated it will watch. That distinction is everything. Section 3. The casting. Why Lisa? Why now? Let's be precise about the timeline here because the timing is not accidental. Lisa departs YG in December 2023. She founds LLOUD in February 2024. She signs a representation deal with WME, one of the most powerful talent agencies in Hollywood, specifically for acting. That same year, it emerges that she has been cast in HBO's The White Lotus Season 3, set in her home country of Thailand, playing a character named Mook. White Lotus isn't a small show. It's an Emmy-winning prestige drama whose previous seasons starred Jennifer Coolidge, Aubrey Plaza, and F. Murray Abraham. Her debut episode aired in February 2025. Co-star Amy Lou Wood, herself a BAFTA winner, told reporters she was genuinely impressed by Lisa's performance, calling their storyline one of her favorites of the season. HBO then submitted Lisa's performance for Emmy Award consideration in the Supporting Actress in a Drama Series category, for someone's very first acting credit. By December 2025, Netflix announces TYGO with Lisa as Rhea. You and I can see what's happening here. This is not a pop star dipping a toe into acting to generate press. This is an 18-month systematically executed plan, prestige TV debut on one of America's most decorated shows, supported by WME, followed immediately by a feature film debut inside one of Netflix's flagship action franchises. This is a playbook, and the playbook has historical precedent, which is worth spending a moment on. Jackie Chan spent years as a legitimate martial artist and stuntman in Hong Kong cinema before Rush Hour in 1998 permanently repositioned him to Western audiences as a movie star. Bruce Lee appeared in American television before Enter the Dragon. More recently, and more relevantly, Awkwafina went from musician and comedian to Best Actress Golden Globe winner on the strength of a single starring role in The Farewell. Simu Liu went from an actor barely making ends meet to the lead of a Marvel film after one breakout credit. In every single case, the mechanism was the same. One project, large enough in scale and serious enough in execution, that forced a mainstream Western audience to recategorize who they were looking at. Lisa has the music fan base, the Blinks, who will guarantee opening weekend engagement no traditionally trained Hollywood actor can replicate. But the Extraction franchise reaches well beyond that fan base. It reaches the 90 million household action audience that watched Extraction because Chris Hemsworth was in it, not because they follow K-pop. That is the audience TYGO is designed to introduce Lisa to. Netflix understands something specific about Lisa that makes her uniquely valuable here. Her 107 million Instagram followers aren't concentrated in one region. They're distributed across the United States, Europe, Southeast Asia, and East Asia simultaneously. That kind of global reach has measurable value in the streaming data. It means that TYGO's first week numbers will be boosted from multiple continents at once, not sequentially. Netflix's algorithm rewards that. Its subscriber acquisition strategy depends on it. And there's one more dimension to this casting that almost nobody has talked about yet. Once you understand it, you'll realize that the question isn't whether TYGO is big. It's whether we're even thinking about it on the right scale. That comes next. Section 4. The Action Genre Challenge. Can she pull it off? Now here's where you and I have to be honest with ourselves as observers, because this is where fan coverage usually falls apart. There is a long and not particularly glorious history of pop stars being placed in action films and producing something that generously could be called underwhelming. The transition from idol to action star is genuinely hard, physically demanding, technically complex, and ruthlessly exposing for actors who don't have the foundation to sustain it. The failure cases are instructive. Several K-pop and J-pop stars over the past decade have attempted crossovers into action-oriented drama, and the pattern that emerges isn't about talent, it's about preparation and project selection. When the project is chosen for maximum fan service rather than maximum production quality, the result tends to be panned by mainstream critics. When the idol's role is essentially decorative, standing near the action rather than being inside it, Western audiences notice immediately. The credibility transfer doesn't happen. The actor retreats to music, and the experiment is quietly filed away. Here's what makes Lisa's situation structurally different from those cases. First, her dance training. Lisa is regarded within the K-pop industry as one of the most technically skilled dancers in the genre. Someone who trained from her early teens in multiple styles, including styles that directly inform the body mechanics of action choreography. The kinesthetic intelligence required to execute complex choreography at speed, the spatial awareness, the muscle memory, the ability to perform under pressure, overlaps meaningfully with the physical demands of action work. It's not the same thing, but it is transferable foundation. Second, the production has TYGO USA's stunt team guiding the action sequences. UAS, the Indonesian martial artist behind the Raid films, which remain some of the most revered action choreography in modern cinema, brings a level of craft and credibility to the fight work that raises the ceiling for every performer in the film, not just the established action stars. Third, The White Lotus already gave Lisa real experience under genuine pressure. Her own account of that debut, sweating through her lines on the first day, pushing through the nerves, is the account of someone who has already faced the camera under high-stakes conditions and delivered. The Emmy submission from HBO suggests the network agreed. The skeptics' counterpoint is legitimate, though. What would have to go wrong? Lisa's role as Rhea involves a kidnapping that triggers the film's central conflict, which structurally means her scenes likely front-load the film. If the character doesn't land quickly, the emotional logic of everything TYGO does afterward loses its grounding. The weight of the story rests, in part, on the audience believing in Rhea as someone worth fighting for. That is not a decorative role. It is a load-bearing one. And that is a higher bar than most pop star action crossovers have ever been asked to clear. Whether she clears it, we'll find out when the film releases. But the architecture of the project around her is as good as any vehicle a first-time film actor has ever been placed inside. Section 5. The Bigger Picture. What this means for K-pop and global entertainment. Step back from Lisa for a moment, because this story is actually about something much larger, and TYGO is one of its clearest expressions yet. We are living through an accelerating convergence of Asian pop culture and Western mainstream entertainment, and the convergence is moving faster than most industry analysts predicted even 3 years ago. Squid Game turned Netflix's Korean bet into an undeniable global phenomenon. BTS proved that a Korean pop act could sell out stadiums in America without any of the traditional machinery of Western radio promotion. And BLACKPINK became the first K-pop group to headline Coachella twice. The question the industry has been wrestling with ever since is, what comes next? Because music tours and album releases can only take you so far. The next frontier, and the one that locks in genuine mainstream cultural presence, is film and television. Specifically, long-form narrative content where audiences spend 90 minutes or 6 episodes building genuine emotional investment in a character. Netflix's strategy in this space is not accidental. They have spent years using celebrity casting as a bridge, placing familiar faces from Asian entertainment into content designed for global distribution. And Lisa represents the most potent single asset they've deployed for this strategy yet. She is not just famous in one market. She pulls audiences simultaneously from Thailand, Korea, the Philippines, Indonesia, Europe, and the United States. That multi-market, multi-demographic reach is something even most Hollywood stars can't claim. Here's the business mechanic that the entertainment press tends to underreport: the parasocial to mainstream pipeline. A fandom like Blink, BLACKPINK's global fan community, creates something that no advertising budget can manufacture: a guaranteed, emotionally invested opening audience. These are people who will watch TYGO not because Netflix recommended it to them, but because they have a genuine personal connection to one of the performers. They will share it. They will review it. They will clip it. They will create the organic content that drives the algorithm to push the film to everyone else. That's the first wave. The second wave is the Extraction franchise's existing audience, the action audience that showed up for Chris Hemsworth and stayed for the stunt work. If the film delivers on that audience's expectations, Lisa moves from pop star who acted to actor who can hold an action film. Those are categorically different things in terms of career trajectory. The stakes extend beyond Lisa personally. She is, whether she intended to be or not, the most visible test case of whether K-pop and Southeast Asian pop culture can translate into genuine Western film stardom. Not as a curiosity, not as a novelty casting choice, but as a sustainable, repeatable model. If TYGO works, the door opens wider for every Asian pop star who comes after her. If it doesn't, it sets the conversation back, and the excuses will come quickly. What does Lisa's career look like in 3 years if TYGO performs the way the industry expects? She is no longer primarily discussed as a K-pop artist. She becomes the first Thai entertainment figure to hold simultaneous A-list status in music, fashion, and global cinema, a position no one from Southeast Asia has ever occupied. The alternative scenario, if the film underperforms, is that she remains extraordinarily successful, but her ceiling as an actor gets quietly revised downward by the industry. The gap between those two outcomes is significant. Section 6. The Revelation. The thing nobody is talking about. I've been building to this since the beginning of the video. Now that you have all the context, here's the angle that almost no entertainment coverage has addressed. And once you see it, the scale of what's happening becomes very clear. TYGO is the 9th collaboration between AGBO and Netflix. Think about what that means. This is not Netflix writing a check to a foreign production company and hoping for the best. AGBO, the Russo brothers studio, has an established multi-year creative and financial relationship with Netflix. That relationship produced Extraction, Extraction 2, The Gray Man, and The Electric State. Every one of those films was designed as a global event, not a regional release. Within that framework, TYGO isn't a spin-off gamble. It is a planned expansion of a proven universe with the same production infrastructure, the same distribution power, and the same global launch strategy that turned 2 action films into some of the most watched content in the streamer's history. Here's the part that almost nobody is looking at. Lisa plays Rhea, whose kidnapping initiates TYGO's entire revenge mission. That is not supporting character territory. That is a narrative anchor position. In franchise filmmaking, the character who sets the hero in motion holds one of the most important functional roles in the story. And if TYGO performs, franchise logic demands that Rhea's fate, and potentially her role in the Extraction universe, continues. At the same time Netflix confirmed TYGO's cast in December 2025, the trades also reported that Extraction 3 is in pre-production, and that a separate Extraction television series has been greenlit with its own showrunner. The Extraction universe is actively expanding in multiple directions simultaneously. Lisa's entry into this world, as a narratively central character in the franchise's first Korean expansion, places her inside a property that Netflix has demonstrably committed to building for years. Compare that to the typical pop star film placement, a standalone film, often produced by a label-affiliated entity, designed primarily as brand extension rather than genuine franchise building. The ceiling on those projects is limited because there's no architecture around them. TYGO has architecture. It has sequel infrastructure. It has a production partner in AGBO that has already done this twice and is doing it again. There is also an awards dimension worth noting. The Extraction franchise hasn't historically been an awards contender. It's high-octane action entertainment, and those two things don't often overlap. But Lisa arrives in TYGO having already been submitted for Emmy consideration for her very first acting role. That submission from HBO signals that her performance in The White Lotus was not merely serviceable. It was compelling enough that a major network thought it was worth entering her into the conversation. An actress with that kind of critical momentum going into her feature film debut is a different proposition than an actress without it. What makes TYGO genuinely historic, and I choose that word deliberately, is this. It is the first time that a Southeast Asian pop star of Lisa's global scale has been cast as a narratively load-bearing character in an already proven Western franchise, produced by the same team that built the franchise, distributed simultaneously to every Netflix market on Earth. Not a test, not a pilot, a full commitment. Let's close the loop on everything we've built here. Lisa is not a pop star who got a movie role. She is a Thai entertainer who spent 18 months systematically constructing a path from music superstardom into global cinema. Through her own management company, WME acting deal, a prestige television debut that earned Emmy consideration, and now a feature film role inside one of Netflix's most commercially proven action franchises. TYGO is not just a Netflix action movie. It is the 9th chapter in an TYGO Netflix creative partnership, a Korean-set expansion of a universe that has collectively pulled in hundreds of millions of views, directed by one of Asia's most respected action filmmakers, and built around a cast that includes some of the most credible action talent in the region. And Lisa's role as Rhea is not decorative. She is the reason the film's story exists. If the Extraction universe continues expanding, and every available signal suggests it will, Rhea's presence in that world has room to grow with it. Here is my genuine assessment. Yes, this is bigger than we think. Not because of Lisa's fan base, not because of the hype around the announcement, but because of the structural specifics, the franchise architecture, the production pedigree, the narrative centrality of her character, and the precise timing of her career trajectory. Every piece of this is pointing in the same direction. The question isn't whether TYGO is significant. The question is how significant, and the answer to that will be determined by what happens when the film actually lands in front of a global audience. If you want to be part of this conversation while it's still developing, drop your prediction in the comments right now. The specific question I want you to answer is this: does TYGO make Lisa a global film star? Or is it the stepping stone to something even larger? Give me your timeline. Does this happen in 1 year? 3? And what does the something even larger actually look like to you? The next video in this series takes a very close look at how Netflix's Asian franchise strategy is changing the economics of global streaming, and specifically what it means for the studios, the stars, and the audiences caught in the middle of it. That one is worth watching. We'll see you there.